That was incredible. Thank you so much. Again, so many great pieces in there. We are going to now bring it home and wrap it up with our final discussion. And as we know these days, there's always a crisis in the news, social media, how we stay connected, and there's no getting away from all of that, right? But how we handle it and lean into it, especially in how we bring it into our workplace and our multi-generations and our cultures and create those safe spaces for those courageous conversations. This is going to be led by Jason Holt, who is a member at Chiesa, Shanahan, and Giatomasi, a seasoned attorney with more than 2 decades of experience in local government, municipal corporation, strategy, litigation, one of our DEI council leaders, and always is offering to help to speak with our members to help them along. And what I just think is really, what I love to highlight here is, recently he's been featured on CBS Sunday Morning News and in many articles and publications as a lawyer who changed history regarding the wrongful convictions of 110 African-American Buffalo soldiers. So gives you some context to what he's bringing to our discussion. And joining him is going to be Matthew Adams and Denise Peoples. The floor is all yours. Please come on up.
Thank you and good morning, good afternoon. Pleasure to see everyone. I have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce the 2 individuals to my right. To my left, I'll start off my farthest left, which is Matthew Adams. He's a partner at Fox Rothschild. He's the co-chair of the firm's white-collar criminal defense and regulatory compliance practice group, an experienced criminal and civil trial attorney. He has a diverse national practice focusing on criminal defense, regulatory compliance, and complex commercial litigation. He's known for his courtroom advocacy skills and meticulous attention to detail. He's an indispensable ally to his clients, ranging from individuals and small businesses to multinational corporations who turn to him for practical, thorough guidance through treacherous legal minefields. Whether they've been indicted, named targets of a grand jury investigation, or are embroiled in a bet-the-company commercial dispute, clients count on Matthew as a go-to lawyer when it matters the most. And to his right is Denise Peoples, who is with the nonprofit New Jersey Sharing Network. Denise is a Paterson, New Jersey native, matriculating from North Carolina Central University with a tri-major in math, accounting, and music. How did you do that? Her financial and administrative background led her to careers within the New Jersey General Assembly as the legislative chief of staff, to name a few. In 2000, Denise was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. After receiving a double lung transplant on October 2nd, 2006, she became a volunteer in 2007 for New Jersey Sharing Network. After an offer for employment in 2015, she joined the network. So I could go on about both of these individuals, but in the interest of time, I'm going to jump right into what is a crisis. Matt, I'll start with you.
Well, in my world, a crisis usually involves somebody in with a gun and a badge knocking at a door and wanting to speak to people. It involves a grand jury subpoena coming into an organization. It involves a crisis where there's a theft of money or property within an organization, or there is an embarrassing or potentially negative news story about an organization or individual that has a financial impact, and that extends into political ramifications, congressional investigations, and things of that variety.
Denise?
A crisis in what the New Jersey Sharing Network does is unfortunately a family. A family at the worst times of their lives. I often like to say, is anybody in here named John? I don't like to use real people's names that are in the room. How about Sally? No Sallys? Okay. John and Sally got up this morning. Hey, honey, love you. Good morning, good morning. What do you want for breakfast? Ah, some cereal. Okay. All right, getting ready to go to work. All right, John, love you. Love you too, Sally. What do you want for dinner? We'll talk about it later. Later doesn't come. Unfortunately, Sally gets a phone call that there has been an accident, something. And she goes to a hospital, and she sees the man who walked out on his own, connected to all types of machinery. And a doctor will come in and give her a grave prognosis that unfortunately something has happened to John, and there is nothing else that the hospital can do. Apnea tests have been done, and someone will be there to talk to her about next steps. That is a crisis to what we do. But like a crisis, you can come out of it.
Well, you see there's two diverging points of view here, and we're going to merge these together. So hold on to your seats. You're in for an interesting and illuminating, and that's my term, ride. So I'm going to go back to Matt. Why is it important for a business to prioritize equity in their response to your definition of a crisis? But one thing I didn't say, you're also a councilman. I won't name the town. What about a natural disaster, an economic downturn, or an event that's political or of social interest?
So a lot of what I do is responding to those crises, but I also help people try to prevent them in the first place by establishing what we call cultures of compliance. And that means regulatory, legal compliance. And well before DEI was a buzzword, this book was written. It's called Why They Do It, Inside the Mind of the White-Collar Criminal. It's written by a Harvard professor by the name of Eugene Soltis. I had a recent opportunity to interview Eugene on my podcast. It's called The Presumption of Innocence. And he and I did a deep dive into his book. And there's really three sections of his book. The first is outlining what white-collar crime is, because there was a time in our country when the types of things that we so frequently associate with white-collar crime was not anything more than just good business. And in a capitalistic society, that's what it was thought, that's what you do to make money. The second part of his book is where he posits a number of theories about why actors commit white-collar crime. And in the third, he does a bunch of case studies, largely from the early 2000s, when these types of corporate compliance catastrophes like Enron, WorldCom, et cetera, were in the news every night. And one of these theories that he posits in part 2 of his book, again, a little bit ahead of his time, because this book was written in 2016, and it was well before DEI was really on the scene as DEI, I'll say. And one of the things he says is that you can't build a culture of compliance when you have individuals that are siloed, where you have cultures where there's a homogeneousness to the way that people interact, and they're sort of left on their own without intermingling. And I think it's illuminative of the issues of the day, because it really speaks to the idea that if you want to have a culture of compliance, inclusion, equity, the idea of blending different perspectives is not just an aspirational goal, it's a legal imperative. And to the second point of your question, yes, I do serve in elected public office, and from time to time, we have things that we have to respond to, and natural disasters are one of them. In this particular area where I serve, we had Hurricane Ida, where it kind of blindsided us in the last couple of years. dumped an enormous amount of rain in a very short window of time. And when you talk about limited resources, because there are limited resources in every form of government, they're not infinite. There are very few circumstances, I believe, where there actually are unlimited resources. You have to allocate to the most in need. And when it comes to equity, in the event like a natural disaster, it always seems that the people of lower socioeconomic means, their impacts are just exacerbated by that natural kind of disaster. And in that one instance, that means pushing resources to people who need it the most. And maybe that means those resources aren't going to the folks that can kind of fend for themselves.
Well, if we have enough time, I'm going to come back to you and talk about good business in the context of blending and de&i. But Denise, do you want to take a bite out of that question?
It is so loaded. It is, oh my gosh, thank you for that. It is just, wow. So when we think about DEIB, there's so, in this industry, in this vein of organ and tissue procurement and donation, there are so many myths and misconceptions. I've had people walk up to me like they see the table and they look at the writing at the bottom and they're like, oh, because first they think we pay electric bills because we have New Jersey shares. They pay bills. We ain't paying bills. So I have to explain. They're like, oh, And I'm like, no, come, let's talk. And I get things like, well, you know, our seasoned society will say in a minute, especially in my culture, I was born with it, I'm gonna die with it. Why? Because I guarantee you, if you needed it, you would be open to accept it. That's one way. Another one is, I want an open casket. Okay, you can have that. And all of this is about education. And that is what one of my main purposes is to educate, not to sign anybody up. Don't care about your nationality. Don't care about your social, economic, none of that. Because this subject, in my world, could care less. We have had infant donors. We've even had somebody 91 donate cornea. This affects everyone, and it starts with what every panel that got up here today said, a conversation. That is our purpose, to have a conversation, but have it with the right information. So we approach, when I say we approach, Sally at the worst times of her life. There are African American Sallys, Jewish Sallys, all types of people that we approach. And our organization is trained through rigorous training called Effective Arts, where we come against that. We have to sit in a classroom and be yelled at and go through all these scenarios. And then there's the experience of a family saying no, but the person could be an organ donor. And they just flat out say no. Usually that's because of myths and misconceptions and no conversation. So we have to dive into that and make sure that we are equipped, sensitive, prepared. And those are the things, being prepared for something. You have to be prepared. That's where our training comes in. So when you put this all together and think about what is the outcome is not always a yes, but the outcome is that education.
Well, Denise, you spark a couple of questions in my mind. Are there cultural nuances when it comes to who is a donor and who is not going to be a donor? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So it's not so much cultural because every individual is different. When we approach, somebody may be able to donate kidneys. Somebody may only be able to do tissue. The difference comes in with the amount of education and someone saying yes or no. That is why we stress having the conversation when you're alive and well. Because I always get, oh, well, what if it's on my license, but my family says no? You bravely stood in line, probably on a December morning, outside MVC, waited for them to open, only to take 3 people at a time, and you stood there all day. You braved all of that to go in and make a decision while you were alive and well. Just like your living will, your advance directive, your driver's license is a legal document. You registering online is legal. A lot of people say, oh, it's for the rich. Well, I'm here to tell you, if it's for the rich, I wouldn't be sitting here. The hospital made a mistake and sent me the bill for my surgery. I opened the envelope like, I'm going to need a heart now. What in the entire world is this? Oh, there was a lot of commas and periods and O's, and I called the hospital like, oh my gosh, Miss Peoples, you weren't supposed to get this. No joke. I know I wasn't. You better talk to the insurance company.
Was that a crisis?
Oh, that was a crisis. Brand new lungs, and now I need a heart? What? A big crisis. But I hear that all the time. And we have equipped hospitals, which are our partners, which we appreciate. We cover 56 hospitals here in New Jersey that by law must report to us only when someone meets clinical triggers. We are not sitting at the hospital waiting. So it's so many myths and misconceptions, but we have helped them find ways to help people get funds in order to, because medication is high when you have a transplant. Very high. When you don't have a transplant, it's expensive. But we have helped families in ways to get those resources to help. So no, it is not a thing of, the diversity because of, a certain race that that comes into play with whether you be a donor, a recipient, and of course not our donor families.
So I'm going to challenge you a bit, Matt. What are some of the common challenges a business organization might face in maintaining equity during a crisis situation? And put that in the context of Denise's answer.
Well, crises bring about stress. They bring about pressure, and sometimes they bring out the best in people, but sometimes they unfortunately bring out the worst in people too. There is a natural predilection for all of us. We suffer from the human condition that sometimes we want to try to cover things up. Sometimes we want to try to shred documents. Sometimes we want to...
This is New Jersey. We would never shred documents.
We want to create distractions. And this really brings to mind 2 things. Every crisis, at least some aspects of it, can be predicted. You know what your business is. You know what your compliance risks are. You know where your sort of touch spots are when it comes to these issues, generally speaking. You can plan for them. My clients have comprehensive plans in place when those crisis issues do occur, like the knock at the door from the people with guns and badges, or the dreaded blue FBI jackets, to say, okay, let's open the page 1, and here's what we do. Here's who we call, here's what we say, here's what we allow them to do, here's what we ask for. All of those things are already scripted out. Because in the heat of the moment, where the pressure is on, the stress level is heightened, and those natural humanistic predilections start to kick in, you need to be rooted in something. And the best way to be rooted in something is to plan ahead. That's one area. And then the other area, and that allows you to engage with that stressor in a manner that avoids the scapegoat issue. Because in a corporate culture, scapegoats are bigger than they are in the street. And we all know that there are biases and that there are prejudices that play into how law enforcement and the street interact on occasion. We've read about them. It happens in a corporate culture too. So the best way is to plan. The other best way to ensure that you don't let that human condition creep in is to have rigorous processes in place for rooting out and investigating compliance risks within an organization. How many in this room know who Sally Yates is? She's famous now, but before she was the Sally Yates that went toe-to-toe with the President of the United States, she was the Deputy Attorney General under President Obama, who wrote something that is now famous called the Yates Memorandum, which in my line of work was one of the cornerstones of what we call the internal investigations movement, which was that as a matter of corporate compliance, there is an expectation for organizations of all sizes, all types, to investigate internally what has transpired and identify individuals who are responsible for it. This movement, this paradigm shift from prosecuting Arthur Anderson, which took out an entire company, which a lot of innocent collateral damage happened from, to finding out the Johns and the Sallys of the world that were responsible for the misconduct and serving them up on a platter, incentivizing companies to serve them up on a platter to the government so that punishment can be rooted out in a exacting manner. And this internal investigations concept is huge within corporate culture, and you can't do an investigation free of bias, that human element, those predilections that we all have. We start these conversations, I love the wording from before, these courageous conversations, by acknowledging that we all have them. We all have the human condition. We're all not perfect. So by having an effective process in place, a corporate compliance culture really is driven by a combination of planning and ensuring due process. So we don't let the heat of the moment, when the crisis happens, our human condition is going to show its face. Don't get me wrong, but it's not going to take over.
So Denise, how do you account for diversity and take into consideration the diverse needs of the workforce and other perspectives during a crisis? How do you do that? How do you do that? And actually, maybe you both can take a piece of that question.
All right. Once again, it has got to be training. First of all, our staff is so diverse. And we know when to, how we educate internally, how it will affect us externally. We can't have someone approach a family who doesn't understand what that family believes. So there's a conversation that happens. Give you an example. I have, for 4 years, I approached families at the worst times of their lives in the hospital. First of all, I'm going to tell Sally, I'm truly sorry for what has happened to your husband, because I got a mom and a dad. And I'm sorry that he left home and is not coming back. Once Sally and I start talking about that, I want to know then, do you understand what the doctor told you, Sally? Understanding is very important. If Sally says to me, I heard the doctor say that John was in a coma, there's no need for me to continue the donation piece, because you can come out of a coma. You cannot come back from brain death. And that doctor said to Sally, unfortunately, apnea tests, it is, determined that John is brain dead. But Sally's upset, and she is holding on to every little bit of hope. So that's what she's going to say. And I'm going to call that doctor back in the room to talk to Sally. Because just like the doctor cannot talk to Sally about organ and tissue donation, you know how that would sound, right? John is brain dead. Now let me talk to you about organ and tissue donation. Not happening. It's not going to be good. Just like me telling her, no, the doctor said, now let me talk to you. So we have to work in partnership. There is, again, that word, education, and the other word, understanding. Once I understand, and Sally understands, Sally, I want to know about John. Oh my God, he got on my nerve. He would always leave just a little bit of orange juice in the container. He did it this morning. And that opens up, because I truly want to know about John. John is not just some joker off the street. You know what I mean? John is a good father. John has done amazing things as far as Sally is concerned. That's not my business. But she loves him. And I need to understand who she is, who was John, so that we can truly honor John and this gift that he just might be able to give. Because John is getting ready, hopefully, to save a life. Not just a plaque on a wall. John is going to save a life. Whether it's tissue, somebody who can't see their grandchildren, but because of John's gift, they can see their grandchildren. Somebody who needs a heart can walk their child down the aisle now because of John. John is special, and so is Sally. But all of that is about education, training, preparedness. And when it comes to that, we can't put a race to that. We all, like he said, like Matthew said, we all have that spirit in us to just be human. But we cannot, in what we do at the Sharing Network, we cannot afford. Too many people are waiting up. There is 4,000 people in New Jersey waiting on a life-saving gift. 100,000 in the United States, because we partner with other organ procurement organizations around the country, and every state has an OPO. We cannot afford to allow a person's race, their economic standing, their orientation. We can't do that. And that is why diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, first of all, starts at the top of our organization. And we have to stay that way. We have to learn in that. We have to grow. And that is my job now, to do that for the organization. And the conversation here today has been amazing. Thank you for everything that's been going on today, because I've been writing notes. But yes, that's a way that we have to keep that DEIB up front.
So I see the wheels are turning with Matt over there. So, spill.
Empathy. What I do when I encounter a client, I often say it's good people at their absolute worst. That's pretty much when I encounter, and a lot like you, different concept, but to be a target or a subject of an investigation, to interact with law enforcement, have a negative interaction with law enforcement, is among the most anxiety-producing events that an individual can have, perhaps short of death. It's very anxiety-producing. I have clients that text me day in, day out, late hours, And I sometimes have to tell them I can't be your therapist and your lawyer, but I also have to have empathy. And that transcends whether I'm representing a client who might be accused of something that will literally change their life because they are potentially facing the prospect of going to prison and losing their livelihood, or in the corporate investigations concept, I have to empathize with folks that may encounter that process that I was talking about, that internal due process that we're trying to afford them. To bring empathy, I can't possibly appreciate every scenario that I could possibly encounter when I'm conducting that investigation. But there's lots of things that happen. There's the single mom who might steal from a company because she's just trying to get her kids a new backpack for school, or clothes, or food. There's a level of empathy that you have to bring to that discussion in order to ensure that the very humanistic biases don't inject themselves into what we've set out to be a fair process. So for me, regardless of what lane I'm in my professional life, it begins and ends with empathizing with what I might be encountering. And that's how I keep myself rooted in some of the concepts that all of you have been so eloquently talking about today.
Well, before we get to Hook, because we're running out of time, I have a question about leadership. What role does leadership play during the course of a crisis in the context of everything that we've been discussing? I'll start with Denise.
That's a great question, and what I was itching to say that works right in. Being from the community, out of Patterson, live in Newark, I see what families at University Hospital, just say, go through when we approach them. And this instance has changed their lives. And a lot of times, because of education, and because of, when I say education, education about organ and tissue donation, and about the myths and misconceptions that surround it, the first time a family has ever seen us was at the worst times of their lives. I needed to change that. I needed to change it. I went to senior leadership, and I said, okay, when we go to a hospital and approach a family, we're asking for a gift. We're asking. Let's figure out a way to give back before they ever need to be asked. And we started a program called Live, Healthy, and Move. And what that is where we go into communities all across New Jersey and we give back. It's a day of any type of resources they need, from fresh food to funeral homes that come and talk about pre-planning. And we give back. We have started, and it was crazy because our CEO said, well, what about books and backpacks and things like that? Okay, we know where we can go to get anything. Let's start an Amazon list, and sent it out to the employees. We totally took care of one school down in Camden and a school, an event in Patterson. Over 800 backpacks full of everything a student needs. So when we're able to connect like that and give back, and they know, if they don't know anything else, but those are the people with the blue and green, that's all we need. Just so people can start that conversation. Our wristbands start conversations. So ways that we can give back to communities, and it doesn't matter what color the community is, but to help a community be better. Our donor families, we have one, their daughter was a donor, baby. She was a donor. They now have a fund. If the head of the household is the one that is in need of a transplant, of course, there may be bills not being paid because he or she is sick. They have funds that they can go in and help with, the PSE&G. They can help with those things. A high school program, one of them started. So we partner with our donor families, organizations, in order to give back. And that it runs across every single race, genre, it does not matter. So our senior leadership is very vested in being not just an asker, a requester, but a giver.
Matt?
As you know, Jason, DEI is in the legal services industry is no longer just something you aspire for. It's a business prerogative. The general counsel guidelines of every major company in the United States that hires us and how we make a living require us to bring diverse viewpoints in the way that we dispense professional services. So as a leader within my firm, in our practice group, we have now well over 30 offices nationally, close to 1,000 lawyers, if not over 1,000 lawyers at this point. When I think about how we hire, how we construct client service teams, these issues are now top of mind because I can't possibly put myself into the experiences of all of our clients or all of the scenarios that we might encounter for our clients, but I might have a colleague who can. And those perspectives are priceless. And it used to be that was like gravy to providing good service. Now it's a necessity because corporate America has required it. And I think it's a good thing because there are situations I have been in with colleagues of mine who I trust and respect, who have pulled me aside and said, hey, maybe you're not, you have a little blinder on to this issue. And those conversations are priceless because I can then say, hey, you know what? I didn't think of it that way. And that's not my fault. I was born this way, right? But the perspective that was whispered in my ear made us better advocates, better attorneys, better professionals. And it starts with the foundation that we've been talking about here all day today.
So as our panel is closing out, I see some smiles out there. 1 minute or less, the most interesting thing that you want to tell the audience about what you do or about what we've discussed today. Start with you, Matt.
Most interesting. I think that what our firm's DEI program has opened my eyes to is things that were already there. We were already aware of each other's differences. Many of them are physical. We look around this room, I can see our differences. What I think a good, healthy conversation about these issues fosters is a good intellectual recognition that we have something to learn from each other. And that is because our education is predominantly experience. We all go to formal education, some longer than others, but most of our real education is from our experience. And I think that the conversations like this one open our eyes to becoming better, smarter, more adept at handling a variety of situations.
What he said. It's just what he said. I mean, educate yourselves. educate each other, and be open to that. Be open to it. I have no clue who my donor was. I have not met the donor family, but I know because of my donor, I can sit here today and talk to you. Open your mind to what could be, what is possible, how you live your life, how you value life, and how you pay it forward. Experience is amazing, but to keep it to yourself is selfish. Talk to each other. Be open. That is one of the major keys, to be open to what is around you, what could be, and have a conversation. And I always say, breathe easy.
So life is moment to moment. Life is precious, so let's not waste it. Thank you so much for listening to us. We appreciate you.
So much. Thank you. What a great way to round out our morning. So thank you all so much. So many great things were shared today. The platinum rule, cautious curiosity, and being sincere, the aha moment. Make your safe space a brave space, managerial courage, legal impediments. At the end of all of that, we all in this room are leaders. Right? We came here today as leaders, we leave as leaders. Those coming up behind us have to see us as leaders, and it's incumbent upon us to be the right leader. So together we can be those change agents that we heard everything about today. And that's our imperative as we walk out of the room today. And I challenge each of us to take an action on something we heard today and put it into practice. I say every day, I'm here at BIA, October will be 10 years, which I can't even believe, right? But I'm extremely proud to represent this organization because I'm extremely proud of the business community that we stand for and represent each and every day when we speak for them and their voice. Today was an amazing testament to what an awesome business community we have here in the state of New Jersey. Thank you all for being here, for your partnership. Thank you to our sponsors for today. I know we had their names up on the board and they're on all the tables. Give them another round of applause. To our great AV today, Scouting Group, thank you. To the great BIA team, and again, to all of you, thanks for being here today.